everyone, and welcome to Bridge to the Galaxy. I'm Tanys Coughlan, Galactic Ambassador with the Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact, and I'm joined today by our guest, Kevin Briggs. Kevin, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tanys. Thank you for inviting me. Without people like yourself and your podcast, I can't get my message out. So, it's important that I do get the message out. So, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I do appreciate it.
Well, it's such an honor that you're joined us today. I'm so pleased. So what I'd like to do is have you maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll get into your story.
Okay. Well, I'm for those viewers that don't know me, I'm an experiencer from the age of 8, and I've had contact with different extraterrestrials, a group of 8 extraterrestrials all my life. The first 2 when I was 8, then I was introduced to another 6 when I was 14, and I've had contact with them all my life. So I'm now working towards communicating. I understand now that the experiencers are the emissaries for the extraterrestrials. So I'm working towards that, working towards some maybe hopefully get some legislation passed, so where we're allowed to speak to the extraterrestrials openly. And so that's where it's led me to today. And I now meet with another group of experiencers, exo-conscious humans, who have all the abilities and contacts that I have. And now we're working together as a small group and hopefully moving the communication with the extraterrestrials into the main public arena, really. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. But it's been a long story to get there. It's a long story.
I bet. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, how you got started? I'm sure your first experience with them was probably a little bit shocking.
It was actually, it frightened me to death. But before I tell you about that experience, our journey actually started when I was 3 years old. My mother had engaged a photographer to take some photographs for the family album. I was duly washed and had my hair combed, and the photographer arrived, and he lifted me up onto the oak dining room table for a better elevation for the photographs. And from that elevated position in the room, I looked around and realized I was conscious again in a physical body. And I was actually looking out from the physical. My conscious energy was looking out, looking around the room, and I was aware of it. So that was my first encounter, really, with my own consciousness, my own new physical body as well at 3 years of age. And I still have that photograph. In fact, I think I put it in my book. And but the first encounter, I was 8 years old, and I was taking a bath at home, and I felt a change in the frequency within the bathroom. And as a child, I was always susceptible to the different frequencies that are around us. And I looked to my right, and 2 beings appeared, who were both human in appearance, one male, one female. They were slightly elevated off the ground, actually, they were about 6 inches. And they were both very attractive. Both had long blonde shoulder-length hair, deep blue eyes, which were very deep blue, and then a blue jumpsuit type garment. And as you see, it frightened me to death as an 8-year-old. And the female, they weren't talking to me, they were talking about me. And the female said to the male, "Is this the boy?" And the male said, "Yes, this is the boy." And then she questioned him again. She said, "Are you sure this is the boy? Look at him, he's small, he's uneducated, and he's frightened by our presence." And she was correct. I was terrified. And Hort, that's his name, the male, he said, "Yes, this is a boy. I will guide him. I will teach him." There was some other conversation, and then they left. And I say, I was so frightened, I didn't get out of the bath. I didn't move. My mother came in to see why I was still in the bath. I told her about the 2 beings, and she said it was just my imagination. Well, it wasn't. I've been in contact with them all my life, and Hort and Dee were true to their word. He's educated me throughout my life, so I've had lifelong contact with them. So that's the beginning of my journey.
Beautiful. So what kind of education did that involve for you?
The main thread of the education is one of consciousness itself and shared consciousness, not only with the human species, but with the plants, the trees, the animals, the earth, the planets, the other species that we live and share in this universe. So it's really one of understanding consciousness and how it can be used for communication, for travel, for healing, for education, for creation and co-creation. And all those things we have the abilities to use and utilize consciousness itself for. And they give me an understanding of how consciousness exists in the materialistic world, as it were, that we live in at the moment. So, yeah, the whole education has been one of understanding consciousness.
Awesome. So what kind of experiences did you have? You must have had some fascinating
Well, yeah,
interactions.
after the first one at 8, it was about a year later. I remember it was a Sunday, and I had some friends round. I was 9 years old, and we finished playing, and it was time to go home for their tea. So I showed them out the back door, and as I turned round, there was I could feel that change in frequency within the house, within the home. So I went looking for it. I went into the living room. I went upstairs into 3 bedrooms, bathroom. I went back down to the living room where it was strongest, and I was drawn towards the curtains, the drapes, and I looked behind the curtain, and there was an orb there, orange orb, about 4 to 6 inches across, orangey yellow in colour, and slightly vibrating. There was no communication with me at that time, but I was a bit concerned because I thought I brought it into the home, and if my mother saw it, I might get into trouble. So I thought, well, when I go to bed this evening, it won't be there tomorrow. I went to bed that evening. I woke up in the morning, and I knew instinctively it was still there. I went down, it was behind the curtain. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it was there for a whole week.
Oh, wow.
Each time I went to school, I thought, oh, I hope it's going to get home. And it was always there until Friday. I came in about 4:30 from school. I opened the back door and I realized it had gone. And I went to the curtain and looked behind it, and it wasn't there. But from that date onwards, I was able to separate my conscious energy from the physical reality, from the physical body, and go and travel as pure conscious energy itself. So I didn't have any lessons with that all. I suspect that he activated something within my DNA that allowed me to separate my conscious energy just by thought, by thinking about it, by where I want to go. And initially, I just used it to go and visit my grandparents, who lived about 70 miles away in Liverpool. And on a Sunday, I just relaxed, have the thought that I want to go over there. I would fly over there, as it were. I'd see the house. I'd go into the roof. I'd go into the bedroom upstairs. They had a dressing room on the master bedroom. And I would sit in a chair, looking down through the floor, and the floor would be opaque. And my grandmother would usually be in the kitchen cooking on a Sunday. My grandfather either reading the newspaper or watching the TV. And it gave me great comfort to do that. But at the time, I always thought, I wonder what they would see if they came upstairs and came into the bedroom. I know the answer to that now, and the answer will be they would see my pure conscious energy orb, which would have been 4 to 6 inches round, slightly vibrating, orangey yellow in colour. They never did come upstairs, but that's probably one of the first lessons of understanding consciousness itself and how it can be separated from the physical realm that we create using thought and consciousness as well. It's all part of the education, but the education, they didn't sit me down in the classroom like they do with some experiences that I've met. All my education was through an experience, and that's why I like the term experiencer, because I learned by the experience that they gave me. So that was the next stage when I was 9.
So it must have been a challenge having those kinds of abilities as a teenager, going through those tough peer conscious years.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I can tell you a quick story about that when I was 16, 17, 18.
Mhm.
But before that, if I just go back a little bit, before that, when I was 14, if I keep it in chronological order, I can tell you what the next stage was when I met the other six. At 14, I had a paper round, and every time I went out in the morning to do the paper round, a UFO would appear above the house. And then as I was walking towards the store to get my papers to collect them, another UFO would appear. And they would follow me around the paper round until I'd finished. And then one would go back in the direction it had come from, and the other one would just go straight up in space. And that was a regular occurrence. And then while I was there and I was doing my paper round, I was always aware that there was someone behind the wall, behind the hedge. So on one occasion, I plucked up courage and I said, I know you're there. Can you show yourself? And these two small grey beings stepped out from behind the hedge, behind the wall. And I said, I wasn't frightened. I said, oh, what do you want? And they said, oh, well, there was a group of people that want to meet with you. And I said, well, I said, I've got my paper round to finish and then I've got to go to school. I can't go with you. And they said, well, you can finish your paper round and then we'll have you back in time for school. So I finished my paper round and I agreed to go with them. So I was taken physically to what I think was a mothership. And the reason why I thought it was a mothership, because when we flew into the hangar, it was huge, absolutely, like a football field.
Wow.
And in there were all these different craft that we see flying around the planet Earth, whatever. People take these blurry photographs of. Well, they were all there, all these. And I was led into a door down into an amphitheater. And as I walked down into the amphitheater, it was full of all these different beings sat there. And at the front was these 8 beings. 2 of the beings were Orton D, the male and female, that materialized in my bathroom when I was 8. And then the others I was introduced to. So the first 2 was Orton D, they're Arcturians. And then Anna, she was like a blue bird type being. And then Zach, I come to know him quite well. He's a small grey. He's an engineer, mathematician. He designs propulsion systems, and he has 3 offsprings. And he messes around with my wife's stuff around the home. He moves them. He likes teasing her and things like that. Then Ra, he was sat in the middle. Huge amount of energy he had. He was Anunnaki, and he leads this group. And then there was a tall grey. He was Targ, that's his name. And he told me that he was responsible not only for the security of this group of 8 beings, but he's also responsible for the security of this quadrant of the galaxy. And I never thought about the galaxies being separated into quadrants. And then Chica, he was a mantis being. And I was a bit perturbed by him because he was 6 foot tall and just looked like a big grasshopper. And then lastly was Orla. She was a tall white. I think she told me she was an astrobiologist. And she had a very pale complexion and her hair was translucent. And I thought I was there then just as a human specimen to be paraded. I realize now that wasn't the case. That was a council, the Galactic Council, and I'm sure there are many. I'm aware now there are several different councils, all working together with different experiences to help evolve humanity through consciousness itself, so we can evolve as a species. So that's where we're heading. But that was when I was 14. So just a little jump each time. Never giving me anything that's too far removed from me to be able to understand it and accept it. And I've never been fearful of anything. I've always opened my mind to it because I was curious as a child and I always wanted to know more. But when I got to 16, 17, I would just travel outside of my body at will. I'll give you a quick example. When I used to get up from my apartment and go to work, I'd walk out the door and I could walk to 2 different bus stops, different directions. And sometimes I get there, there'd be a line of about 30, 40 people. So I thought, oh, I should have gone to the other one. So what I used to do, I'd come out of my apartment, I'd leave my body, just nip up to see which line was the shortest, and then walk down to that line. So I just use it like
Advantages.
that. Yeah, advantages, yeah. Or in those days, we didn't have cell phones and I didn't have a phone in the house. So if I was going around to friends, I had to walk round to see if they were at home. So I'd just leave my body, nip over there, nip in through the roof and see whether they were at home or not. if they were at home, I'd walk around and then we'd go out. So yeah, like you say, advantages. But to me, it was normal. I thought it was just another sense that we had, like touch, taste, seeing, hearing, and out of body travel. Normal. And so I asked my family, I asked my friends, but I asked in a third party because I wasn't fully sure. And I said, I've got a friend of mine who travels outside of his body. Do you know anybody that can do that? No, no. And the answer came back, no. Nobody knew anything about it. So one evening, I asked Art. I thought, well, I know there's a lot more to this. I'll go to bed this evening and I'll ask Art to come and show me more.
So did you get a lot of your teaching then in the dream time?
Yes, I think I did. Some of it was in the physical. There were many modalities of contact, and I've probably experienced them all. And again, those modalities of contact, of experience, are part of the education. I know when I decided to ask Art, I went to bed that evening. I know where I was living at the time, and I lived there from 16 till about 19, I think. And I held out, I went to bed, I relaxed, I opened my mind, I held out my hand, and I said, Art, I know there's a lot more to this, a lot more information. Can you come and show me some more? So he came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body. Bearing in mind, I'm used to doing that on my own. I've been doing it since I was 9. And I looked down, I could see my body was still asleep, and I was holding his hand. We went out through the window, we just flew around the subdivision, and then came back into the window, and I could see my body asleep, and I went back into my physical body. I woke up the following morning thinking, wow, well, was that a dream, or was it real? I wasn't certain. So I thought I'll try the same thing the following night. So the following night, I did exactly the same process. I relaxed, I opened my mind, I asked Art to come and show me more. I held out my hand. He came, he took hold of it. I left my body. I looked down, I could see it asleep. We went out through the window. Only this time we went down into Leeds city centre, where I lived lived in Leeds. And in the Leeds city centre, I recognised the town hall, the hospital, the university where I worked as a technician at the time, and all the people in the streets milling around. It was a very vibrant nightlife in Leeds. So the streets were so busy. We came back to my apartment through the window. My body was asleep. I went back into my body. So the second day, I thought, I'm still not certain whether I'm dreaming or whether this is real. So I thought, well, I'm going to ask him again for the third day. So I went through the same routine, but when he came, he took hold of my hand. I left my body. I said to him, can we go out to the roof this time? So I said, I'm not certain whether I'm sleepwalking or dreaming or what's happening, but my apartment's 3 stories up and it's concrete pavement below. I'm not quite happy about going out through the window. Can we go out through the roof? We went out through the roof. And then all subsequent journeys together, we went out through the roof and travelled together. As I've been travelling since 14 on my own, and I could go anywhere just through thought, using consciousness as a conduit for the travel, which is part of the education. And so that was the introduction of traveling outside of the body from with someone else, which is interesting, which broadens your horizons, which makes you have a greater reality than what other people see. Because once you expand an understanding of consciousness and utilize it, it opens up a whole new world, really. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so you went on to be a police officer, you were saying.
I did. When I mentioned earlier, I was a technician at the University of Leeds. I was there for about 10 years or so, 11 years maybe. And I decided I wanted changing career. And I applied for the West Yorkshire Police, and I was accepted, and I was a police officer until I retired. So yeah.
How did that go with these abilities? I bet that would have been a very interesting blend.
Well, it taught me a lot of skills. I mean, the police officer job is not an easy job. It's a very difficult job. So I got a great education in communication, which is quite interesting in relation to what I'm doing now. I'm communicating my stories of the contact and consciousness and understanding through probably the educations in relation to communication, because you have to be a good police officer, you have to be a good communicator. Or you did in the UK, because we weren't armed. We just had a wooden stick in those days when I was a police officer. So you talked your way out of things. You calm things down. You were a negotiator with people of all different walks of life and under all different influences. You know, people in drugs, drunk, things like that. People angry, people are violent. So yeah, it gives you a good understanding of people. But now I realise that I'm using those communication skills to help share the message about the extraterrestrials that are here.
Mm-hmm. So what other sort of interactions did you have that stick out for you that were
Okay, well, when I just
impactful?
mentioned about Orc coming on those three occasions, he came to me on the one of the occasions. Again, I just asked him, and he turned up, and he says, "Kevin, I'm going to take you somewhere special tonight. Will you go with me?" I said, "Yes, I'm quite happy to go with you." So we went out through the roof. Only this time we just kept going up and up and up and up. And I could see the earth in the background getting smaller and smaller. Not unlike the photograph behind me now. The earth was blue, it was nice and big, and then it got smaller and smaller and smaller as we went higher and higher. And we went into another dimension. And when we went into that dimension, there was a line of people there, 30 people. At the front of the line was my deceased father. He was stood up, he was 6 feet tall, and I had never seen him standing before because he was always in a wheelchair when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And he greeted me with a beaming smile. And he said he was going to introduce me to my family members going back 30 generations. And the feeling of love, that emotion of love, the feeling that emanated from that group of people was almost overwhelming. It was just huge. Anyway, we went down the line. My father introduced me to each individual, and they showed me their last incarnation, what they did while they were down here. And then we got to halfway down the line, about 15th person. And instead of seeing a physical shape, I saw a pure conscious energy orb, orange, 45 sticks in diameter, slightly vibrating. And but then they showed me telepathically what their last incarnation was. So I went down the line, came back up the line, and then Art said it was time to leave, so we left. And then we went and visited them again and again. And then I got so used to visiting them with Art, I was able to do that on my own. And again, the experiences that I had taught me how to do that. So I would go and visit them on a regular basis over a 2 year period on my own. Just visit as you would with your aunts and uncles and your grandparents here in the physical realm. And but they always wanted me to stay with them. Every time I said I'll have to go now, no, no, stay with us, stay with us. No, you don't want to go back down there. I said, oh, I do, darling. I'm enjoying myself down there, and I've got things I need to do. And I was finding it more and more difficult to leave them and to get back into my body. So I decided one day at work, I remember looking out the other window, I stand there, look out that window, and I thought, well, I don't think I'll have to go back and see them again because of what I've explained. And but I cannot just not go back. I'll go back tonight and I'll let them know that I won't be coming back to see them again. So I went up, relaxed, I opened my mind, I went to see them. Again, this feeling of love was just overwhelming. Just everybody was just so pleased to see you. It's just amazing. And had the conversations as you would visit with normal family members here.
Mm-hmm.
But then I told them, I said, I won't be coming back now because of the reasons I mentioned. And they still tried to persuade me to stay. And I said, no, I have to go. And I haven't been back since. But I know they're still there. They're still alive at that higher level of consciousness.
Yeah.
Down here in the physical, we have the lower levels, and that gives us the reality, the solidness of of what we see, which is real. But there are different levels of consciousness, and depending on where you are at that level, depends on your life, on what you're doing. So quite a big lesson that. And because I understand that, and I know they're still there now, if I wanted to, I could go and visit them, but I don't need to. I've done it so many times over a 2-year period. It's just part of the education that when the physical dies, we just continue on as pure conscious energy. But I already knew that anyway, because I'm able to travel like that anywhere I want to go now, because I'm able to separate that consciousness from the physical. Once you leave the physical behind, you can go anywhere, So it's like a symbiosis of consciousness and the physical reality, but I'm able to separate the two.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's true. I mean, we talk about this being real, but really that's very real as well. And that's part of that
Without a doubt.
education, I mean, we talk about this physical reality being real, but it really, all of it is real. And that's
Yes.
part of the education. I feel like, you and I and others like us are here to bring forward, is that it's not just what's here in the physical. There's way more to it. And
Yes. And it's not separate. It's all one.
yes.
It's just whether you are able to access it. And that's the key. And that's where we need to evolve as a species in relation to understanding that. And then we can go and travel as our extraterrestrial families do. But they also have the physical as well. They can travel in the physical. But I very often when I was growing up, I would go and meet on the astral plane. I would leave my physical body, go onto the astral plane, and meet them there. And I know on one occasion, I was just traveling on the astral plane just because it's pleasurable to leave the encumbrance of the physical body behind and the physical realm. And I'm just flying on this astral plane. I don't know where I was particularly going that particular day or night, but anyway, the Orton D came alongside me in a craft, and the craft itself was conscious. It was conscious energy. They invited me onto the craft, and as I went through the skin of the craft, I realized that it was conscious. I could feel that conscious energy. When I went inside, they said they got a message from somebody. Would I convey the message? So they gave me the message. I said yes, I would. And then I said, well, before I leave, I'd like to. Can you explain something to me? I said, if I explain what I'm understanding, and if you can confirm it or whatever. And I said, well, here I am traveling on the astral plane as a human being outside of my physical body. You come along as two other beings outside of your physical body in a conscious craft that you've created. And I see you as two pure conscious energy orbs. How do you see me? They say, Kevin, we see you exactly the same. And my understanding of it, again, the experience was the education. I'd already got used to seeing orbs when I met my deceased families. And so it's really just the next step within my own education in relation to that reality of who we are as a species and meeting with the beings that are at the higher level of consciousness. And that's really what they've done. They've educated me in all the modalities of contact using conscious energy that they use. And that's what makes me a good emissary for them. Because when I'm speaking to them, if you're speaking to French people, you need to be able to speak French, don't you? Or if you're speaking to German people, you need to speak in German. Well, I can understand consciousness, reach those higher levels of consciousness, and communicate with them in their language, because their language is the language of consciousness itself.
Right. So because it's consciousness, you don't need to know a language per se, like French or German, right? It's like
exactly, because
it's all energy.
It's energy itself. The energy, the communication is carried on the wave of the energy. And they give me scientific downloads to explain that. So I have an understanding of it as well. In fact, I've spoken to a couple of leading scientists in relation to that. And my understanding that they've given me is in line with what our leading scientists understand of consciousness at the moment. Yeah. So with a little bit extra in relation to all the modalities that it can be used for.
I was going to say, I'm sure they have a little bit more understanding than ours. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're doing
We're
well,
getting
but
there. Yeah, we're getting
we
there.
have some
Yeah,
progress to make still.
yeah, yeah. So it's really, but it's normal to me because I've been
Mhm.
brought up with it and been educated with them. Now, my brother, he's retired now. He's an aircraft engineer. He had an excellent job at his own business at one time. He flew all over the world repairing craft and aircraft pieces. And but he knew of my experiences because I spoke about them as a child. He didn't have any himself, so he doesn't have any of these abilities. But he's now learning some of them actually. But because he was taught how to repair aircraft, large aircraft, 747s. I can't do that. No
Yeah.
clue because I haven't been taught. So really, it's just a matter of education. At the end of the day, sit down in a classroom or given experiences, and I mean, if you had a fault with the 747 and you just phone my brother up, Mike, he'd say, "Oh yeah, that's so and so. Check this, remove that, and change that." Well, I won't know what to do, but and it's as simple as that, really, because we are an intelligent species. We just confine ourselves within our own thoughts, within the limited education system that we have, and we need to expand that. And that's what you're doing with your being a galactic ambassador. That's what you're doing. You're sharing the knowledge, sharing the information, and expanding those people's consciousness who are interested in learning more about who they are, why they're here, what's the mission, do they have a mission, and all those things that consciousness understanding I believe I have a happy life because I connect and interconnect with everything that surrounds me because I realize it's all part of my consciousness. I've got a huge sycamore tree and I sit under that in a chair and I'll sit there for half an hour or so. I'll have my dogs by my side and I just sit and watch what's going on around me. There's a whole life, a whole plethora of things happening that we don't see because we don't take the time to see it. I know I sat there a few months ago and I saw this big grasshopper. I know I mentioned Chica being a mantis being.
Yeah.
And I saw it. I'm sat there in this chair and I saw this grasshopper. And I knew sometimes I have a knowing things that are going to happen sometimes. I call it knowing. And I knew this grasshopper was going to come and land on me. I just knew it. And it was about 20 feet away. And it leapt and came towards me. And I looked at it. I said, I know you're going to come and land on me. Then it jumped to the side about 6 feet. And I thought, no, yeah, you're going to come and land on me. It jumped back to the middle. And it jumped again and landed on my stomach. And I looked down at it. I said, I knew you were going to come. I knew you were going to do that. And then he started walking up my chest, and I had an open neck shirt on like this. And I said, I don't mind you coming and seeing me, but don't go up into that open neck. I said, go up and sit on my shoulder, and you can sit there as long as you want. And
Yep.
it changed direction and went and sat on my shoulder for about 5 minutes, and it jumped off. But that's just a small example in relation to seeing what's going on. That little grasshopper was part of my consciousness. And the fact that I knew he was going to, did I create the fact that he jumped on me because I'd created the thought? I suspect so. But
Communicating. You were communicating with them.
communicated with me. Yeah. And I
In that
mentioned
way.
my brother. I've got a very interesting story with my brother. He, as I said, he was an aircraft engineer, a nuts and bolts man. He retired, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now, and him and his wife moved down to Spain. He sold up from the UK, and then I speak to him regularly on the phone and by Zoom or whatever, FaceTime. And he said to me, "Oh, Kevin," he said, "you see butterflies down here? They're huge, absolutely huge." And we have butterflies in the UK, but they're not really big. And I said, "Oh," I said, "well, why don't you ask the butterfly to come and land on your hand so you can have a closer look?" He said, "Oh, they won't do that." I said, "Well, why don't you go out and ask one?" So I said, "Well, indulge me." So he went outside. He's got a balcony. He's on a hill, and it overlooks the Mediterranean Sea. And I said, "Right, next time a butterfly comes past, hold out your hand like that. Ask it to come and land on your hand, but you have to give it a reason." And I said, "The reason is you want to look at the beautiful colours on its wings." So a butterfly came past. He put his hand. He asked it. It flew by, went out of sight, turned around, came back, and landed on his fingers. So I said,
Beautiful.
right, okay, that's good. Then I said to him, right, what you need to do now, you need to compare, you want to ask it to fly away and come back with a friend. But you have to give it a reason. And I said, the reason is you want to share, see the colours, the different colours on your friend's wings. So it's off, it flew out of sight, it came back, it landed on his fingers, and his friend landed on his forehead. So he'd got two butterflies. Look at them. And
That's
then he had
amazing.
12 butterflies landing on him that day. He'd been there 4 or 5 years, 4 years probably, and he'd just been watching them flying by like this.
That's
And then
awesome.
I think the following day or the day after, he said to his wife, Lorraine, come outside. We'll go and ask the butterflies to come and land on you. So they went outside. He must have said the same process. And I've got photographs of all this because he sent me them. And his
Awesome.
wife's got these butterflies all the way up her arm. And he'll be reading a book and they'll come and land on his book, or they'll land on his foot, or they'll land on his glasses. You know, they just land everywhere now because he's using consciousness as the conduit for communication. And he reached out to them. And but we don't understand we have those abilities, but we do because we're all part of that shared consciousness.
Yes, and we see some of that, I think, with when we see the ships, the UAPs or UFOs in the sky as well, because we do have communication with them as well.
Without a doubt, yes. We
Yeah,
just like the butterfly, you're using thought and consciousness. If you want to see a craft, you can use thought and consciousness as the conduit for the telepathic communication. And the majority of my communication now is telepathic, but I've learned over the years to be comfortable and confident with that telepathic communication. Because as I was learning it, I believe we all have these abilities. They just get quashed because we don't develop them, we don't use them, so they fade away. But every time I was given some information in a download, or I was given some telepathic information, I would ask them. On one occasion, they gave me the download of the quantum unified field theory, of which
my
I knew
goodness.
nothing about. And they just gave me it in an instant. For the viewers that don't know what a download is, it's a large amount of information just in a split second. And that's what they did. So it's just given to you using consciousness as the conduit for the information. So what I did on that occasion, I said, you've just given me all this information about the quantum unified field theory, which I knew nothing about. Can you confirm that the information has come from you by showing me a craft? And a craft appeared immediately. So I went inside to get my wife, and I said, Sandy, come outside quick, there's a craft here. She came outside. I have a pool here with a pool net. We went outside the pool cage, and then a second craft appeared. 3, 4, 5, 7 in total appeared, flew
Wow.
silently over our heads, not very high, 500 feet or so, and then changed direction by about 80 degrees. And then they disappeared sequentially as they arrived. So that was a confirmation of the download. And another one, they gave me a download of the theory of everything, really just explaining consciousness, really, from our scientific perspective of it. And
Mm.
on this occasion, I was sat on my own deck, and I said, they gave me the information. So I said, can you show me a craft as confirmation that it's you and not my own imagination? Craft appeared immediately just outside the pool cage, and it flashed 1, 2, 3 times. So that was confirmation. Well, if you do that all your life in relation to when you receive, and I asked for different things, or sometimes I got downloads about other things, and it's night time, and I'll ask them if they'll turn the street light off, and the street light goes off immediately, or vice versa. I get information during the daylight hours, and I'll say, right, you just give me this information. Can you turn that street light on? And the street light will come on. So when you do that, you're very comfortable with the communication that you have. And I know on one occasion, quite a few years ago, this is another lesson that they gave me with an experience. I was sat watching TV. It was about 10 o'clock. And at that time, I had about a dozen or so chickens. And every night I have to lock them in because the coyotes will come round and steal them. And I'm sat there and I think, And I always close it when it gets dark, because they all just wander back in, sit and roost, and then I just go and close the door so nobody can get in. And I got this thought, and thought was, did I lock the chickens in? I thought, oh, I better go check. Because if I don't go check, and I didn't, and I've no chickens left in the morning. So I got up, I went out, I walked up to the chickens, and the door was locked. But then the street light went off. And then there was a second street light, and that went off. I thought, I bet there's a craft in the area. So I looked up, and there's this big triangular craft about 400 feet or so, all lit up like a Christmas tree. That was a lesson in telepathic communication. They gave me the thought, but I had to act upon it to complete the lesson, as it were. And fairly simplistic, but it's so if we take notice of our thoughts, I know we have our own thoughts as well, but the telepathic communication is a great form of communication. Again, using this is why I can ask them a question. I remember speaking to a guy from Canada. I went down to a MUFON conference. That's another story, but it's a MUFON conference in Orlando. And when I was there, I met this Canadian engineer. And he said to me, Kevin, do you know anything about the propulsion systems that the ETs use, the anti-gravity ones? I said, no, I don't. He said, well, can you ask them? I said, yeah, I can ask them. I'll ask them and see what they say. So I got his email and everything. And then I asked. And as I asked for the information, I got a download of how one of these anti-gravity propulsion system works. So I wrote it all down, sketched it down. I'm not a very good sketcher, but and I sent it to him. But I read the information, and to me, it made sense. And they had an explanation with the diagrams of how it worked and the electromagnetic fields that they used, and how it was using the Earth's magnetic center, as it were, and repelling like two magnets. And that's how they did it. That's how they. But it was quite fascinating that they gave me this diagram thing. So we're able to do that. And once you're comfortable and happy with that, that's why we should take notice of our thoughts. If you ask for something, then you have to take notice of what's coming back to you.
For sure. And I think that, a lot of people, they don't realize that they're getting telepathic communication all the time. They think it's just their thoughts.
They do, yes. And that's the beauty of once you understand telepathic communication, and then I can have a two-way conversation. I'm sure you can, just by sat here now. They may even just give me some information while I'm sat here. And then sometimes they'll give me information to convey to other people. And I found that difficult in the past because it's very, especially if it's from a deceased person as well. But I have passed the messages on, and they've always been beneficial to the people that received them.
Yeah.
But it's the same
Takes some getting used to.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
And very often they'll put some information in there that the only the person who's receiving the information will understand that, because it's been something personal that's given to them. Yeah. So yeah, it's but again, it's that understanding of consciousness, and that's why the mediums who connect with the people, the deceased family and friends, all they're doing is reaching out through consciousness and making that contact. Well, that's part of my education as well. Only, I went out to meet them as well, about 30 generations. But that was part of the education. So I fully understand how the mediums do it. And I say, by them, I've had a couple of 2 or 3 where I've had to convey messages from deceased families and from people who I don't know sometimes. And it's very difficult to convey a message to someone who you don't know from a deceased person who you didn't know either. But there again, they gave me that when they gave me that message. It's a long while ago now. It was a message for Dr. Stephen Greer, and I'd heard of it, and I said I'd convey the message. Anyway, when I came back to my body from traveling in that craft with them, I woke up in bed. And I wrote the message down, who it was for, his name, time and date, whatever. Because I always make records. And I woke up in the morning and looked at the note and I thought, I don't know this man. How can I say I'm traveling on the astral plane when a conscious craft comes alongside, and there's two extraterrestrials in there traveling as the pure conscious energy orbs. You'll think I'm a nutter. So I screwed it up. I said,
Mhm.
I'm not doing that. And I threw it in the trash bin. And then the following night I went to bed, and um, they contacted me in a dream, another modality, both Art and D. They came and they said, it's very important you convey this message to Dr. Stephen Greer. And I didn't know him. I knew of him, but I didn't know him. And so I thought, right. Then they gave me a reason why. So I thought, right, I better convey the message. But how am I going to do it? So I
Mhm.
went on to YouTube and I put his name in. And the first video that came up on the top right-hand side was Dr. Stephen Greer doing a presentation from a press conference in Washington, D.C. And sat next to him was a police officer. I didn't know him either, but I knew of him, a guy called Gary Heseltine. So I thought, well, there's a connection. And he worked in the similar area to where I worked as a police officer, or I didn't know him, it was a different section. So I contacted him by email. I thought, well, I can't put all this in an email. I'll get his phone number and I'll phone him. So I phoned him. I gave him the message, and 20 minutes later, Dr. Stephen Greer replied by email to Gary. Gary conveyed it to me. He thanked me for the information, said he would take it under advisement. And when they gave me that information, I said to them, who shall I say the message is from? And they said, tell Dr. Stephen Greer it's from the light beings. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. So I conveyed that within the message. And when he replied to the message via Gary, via the email, he put a photograph of a light being that he had seen while he was out in the field doing some research. So that was my confirmation. But I felt like it was a
Absolutely.
weight was lifted on my shoulders because, for a total stranger to come and say, hey, I've been traveling outside my body on the astral plane, meeting with extraterrestrials, the normal person would think you're just a lunatic. But because he's got his own contact anyway,
Yeah.
and I've never met him, that's the only information I'll contact with him. I follow what he does, but yeah, just fascinating. But I did ask them. I said, "Oh, why did you give me such a difficult message to convey to somebody in such a manner?" And they said, "Kevin, we wanted to see if you would convey messages from us." But it gave me a moral dilemma because they said that if he didn't change his itinerary on a specific day, some harm might come to him, or he might even die.
Mm.
And I thought, well, if I don't tell him, if I don't convey the message, and something happens to him, I'd never I'd
Never
never
be able to forgive
forgive
yourself.
myself,
Yeah.
never forgive myself. And so it was a moral dilemma. I thought, well, if I do contact him and give him the information, and he thinks I'm a lunatic, I can put up with that. It won't bother me.
Yeah.
But when I did convey the message and got it back. So it was a moral conflict I had, and obviously to see if I would convey messages from them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they do that on purpose with other experiences. They'll give them parts of the information. So they've got to do some work themselves to
Mhm.
get to the end goal, the end result. It's all part of that education, really. I mean, looking back, I shouldn't have been so hesitant. And I've had other messages I've conveyed to people. But now, if they want to speak to people, say, in our government, they can use me as an emissary, as a go-between, I'm sure. And they already asked me to reach out quite a few years ago to the United Nations and in relation to a mandated protocol to see if we had one, received the ETs. And at
Yeah.
that time, I contacted the office of Nicholas Hedman, the Outer Space Affairs Committee chairman. He was at that time. I don't know whether he still is. And I asked him if there was a mandated protocol to receive the extraterrestrials. And he did respond. He said that we don't have a mandated protocol in place at this moment in time should advanced extraterrestrials wish to communicate with the UN. So I like the way he used the word advanced, and I was surprised that it responded to my communication, but nothing materialized from that. But I was comfortable reaching out, and I don't mind saying now that I have contact with extraterrestrials, because there are many people reaching out. In fact, I saw one just this recently, yesterday, Chris Bledsoe. He was interviewed on Jeff Mara podcast, YouTube podcast, about his contact. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely. So if anybody hasn't seen that, you need to watch it. I think he had 48,000 views. So the information is coming from the extraterrestrials through the experiences and sharing that information. So that's well worth the watch. I was very impressed with the interview and the information. And I understood the information. And somebody mentioned about how did he communicate with them. And he said he used prayer, but prayer is thought. So he's really using telepathic communication. He just didn't fully understand that at that moment. So prayer is thought. Prayer is telepathic communication to higher levels of consciousness. So it's all the same information. But yeah, a fascinating interview. And it's nice to see so many people speaking out now. I speak to a lot of experiences. And again, many, many years ago, we'd been ostracized for speaking out. Well, I never did. It wasn't until about 4 years ago. It was only some of my close friends, my brother and my wife that knew of my contact. And 4 years ago, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I came back from the bathroom and I got into bed. I was just about to snuggle down, and a bright light appeared outside the bedroom window. The light shone into the bedroom. It came through the window, and the whole bedroom lit up like a myriad of white butterflies. It was just pure white light. And then they materialized at the bottom of the bed. And after pleasantries, I said, what's the reason for your visit? And they said, Kevin, we want you to talk about your lifelong contact with us. We want you to write about your lifelong contact. I said, well, I don't mind talking about it, but I'm not a writer. And Art said, well, we will continue to guide you. We will continue to teach you. In fact, Kevin, you will write 2 books, and we'll give you information to include in the books. I've written one now and had that published. So I'm working on the second one. But I mean, that content is just amazing. But now I speak openly about it because it's happening to so many others. So I'm not part of the small percentage now. The percentage of people having the contact is getting bigger and bigger, and they're giving more and more information out to people. So it's clearly my group of ATTs, they refer to it as the reveal. That's my mission here, to help facilitate the reveal globally of their ambassadors. And that's part of my work now. That's what I'm doing. That's what it's led me to this day. And I'm working with Rebecca Hartwright and her exo-conscious community. There's a whole community there of people who have their own understanding of consciousness. They have their own contact. And when we get together as a group and share that information, there's a huge amount of information and contact and connection there with the higher conscious beings, the extraterrestrial. It's just truly amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So,
in fact, sorry, I'll just mention one of the group, Karen, she's had exactly the same scientific downloads in relation to the quantum unified field theory. She saw me talking about it on a podcast somewhere, and I went into the whole explanation of it. And what I said was the exact words that she received in the download. So it's funny how these things go full circle. She's now a major part of Rebecca's exo-conscious community, and we're all still continuing to receive information. We're sharing that information. We're becoming the emissaries for the extraterrestrials. So I think that's quite interesting. Development in that, and that's because we're all following our path of how why we are here, to help with this monumental event which will change humanity's direction for time to come. So
what information have you been given about this reveal, Kevin? Have they given you any kind of information about the reveal?
Right, yes. What they say now, they've approached our governments on numerous occasions. Our governments are not prepared to, at this moment, act upon it. They may do in the future. So now they've decided they've changed tack, and the reveal will come from a request from these citizens of Earth. And I suspect these citizens of Earth will be the many groups like your group, many galactic ambassadors like yourself, like Rebecca Hardcastle's group, XO Conscious Community. They will all come together, and their emissaries within those groups will reach out to our ET star families, and they will respond to that, as they are doing with Chris Bledsoe. He goes outside now, asks them to show the craft. The craft turned up. The film crews are there to film it. So we're moving forward quite rapidly. In fact, he said on his that podcast I watched yesterday that he's on the History Channel. Well, that's fascinating, because how many people watch that? Thousands, millions, probably. So
Absolutely.
we're all being guided now towards the reveal itself, and that's my mission here. That's always been my mission. But first, they had to educate me in relation to consciousness and reaching out and communicating with them, which they have done. And now with everybody else or connecting with them, we're raising our collective consciousness as a species, because as people see them or see the UFOs, it activates something within our DNA system that allows us to expand our own consciousness to see them. And that's the key. Our own thoughts inhibit who we are. If you can open the mind and expand those thoughts, then those thoughts expand your reality, expand your consciousness. And then if there's enough people do that, we expand our collective consciousness as a human species. And that's what's happening. And I see it happening quickly now. It's expanding rapidly, exponentially, so we say. Because if I'll go to a local restaurant and I'll start chatting with somebody at the bar or something, and they all seem interested in it now. It's out there in the public. It's in the public domain. I remember a couple of weeks ago, talking to this guy, and I'd mentioned it before, and he was never interested. And then he said to me, "Did you see that on the news about that new conference that's going on? That new committee that the Congress are doing about UFOs?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I've seen that."
Yeah.
Wow, he said. So the information is filtering down, filtering through, and like I say, the experiences are the emissaries for that, I'm sure. Yeah. So I like the word emissary. I know that because my understanding of consciousness is all these different levels that we have, and we'll go all the way up with the different species, different life forms, up to the angelic realm, up to the watchers, up to source energy. That's my understanding of consciousness. Yes. And a friend of mine who has contact with the angelic realms, with Archangel Yohe, Archangel Michael, Archangel Abraham, and one other, I forget the other one now. And she got a message from them for me. And at that time, I had met her, not physically, but on Zoom and things. And she said she'd been given the information that, Kevin, you are an emissary for the extraterrestrials. And I'm thinking, wow, I've never thought about that before. So now I keep using that word. I think it's right, but I don't think it just refers to me. I think it refers to all the experiences. They're all the emissaries for the extraterrestrials. It's not just me. I've just been given that one piece of information, that one word. But that word is very important because it reflects and refers to all the experiences. We are all the emissaries. And that's why we're being taught. And we're all at different levels of understanding of it and the different experiences that we have. So, yeah, I think it's very exciting times. And I've been told that we are moving towards the golden years for humanity. With new technologies, shared technologies. And so, yeah, it's a great time to be alive and to see this happening. It's not going to be easy because a lot of people don't want it. There's the evil side of consciousness that will try and stop this. But there has to be, within consciousness itself, there is an evil, there is a good. And when it's in balance,
it's all about balance.
It's all about balance. When it's in balance, the good can come through. If we're out of balance, then the evil is coming through on the other side. And we've seen that these past few years in relation to what's been happening on our planet, what's been happening to the people. So hopefully we can get that balance back again and allow the goodness of humanity to come back through. And I'm sure it will. We've had these upheavals in the past, the different wars we've had. That's when the evil has risen its head, and it does go back to that balance. But it's easier if you have an understanding of it in relation to how do we get back to that equilibrium, that balance of consciousness, which is what it is really. Because don't forget, we are creating it. Those evil people are creating that reality using thought and consciousness. Now, whether they know they're doing that on purpose, if they do, then they're really, really evil people. If they're doing it accidentally, then, well, we'll just have to wait and see. But that's why our thoughts are so important in relation to being positive, being kind to everybody, plants, trees, the animals, everything.
Absolutely. I mean, love is the key to a lot of this.
Yes. Well, I was told that love is one of the highest vibrational frequencies of consciousness.
It is.
Well, I mean, that's just, and I know people that reach out with these CE5 groups. Those are groups that go out into the backyard with family and friends and just ask the ETs to show themselves. And they do, but they say that you've got to show love and respect for them. And then because those energies of conscious love go out to through the universe, and then they'll show themselves, they'll show their craft and things. I know Costa McCreese now, he has etletstalk.com, and he has over 1 million people within the different groups now going out and reaching out to our ET star families, and they'll show up, the craft will appear, they'll flare up, flare down, and some people get telepathic communications. I know a couple just recently that have had them, and they've been touched on the knee, touched on the shoulder. The next step, that physical contact of the ETs touching them, and so yeah, it's like I say, a fascinating time to be here and to witness it, really.
And it's for me, I feel so honored to be able to be part of the process for everybody.
I would agree with that. It is. I mean, we put a lot of work into it, don't we? And all the experiences they put. I was speaking to another group the other day, and one lady was saying that she needs a break. She's been doing this for 20 years or more, and but sometimes there's so much work to do. There's always the next step, always the next step. So, but like you said earlier, Tanys, it's a labor of love. And,
absolutely.
And what a great opportunity to be a part of it and to see it unfold as it is doing, and that's just great. Yeah.
And many of us have done this for many lifetimes already as well. Right?
Yeah, well, that's true. I remember 3 past lives. I remember 2 past deaths because they were violent. One I was a Knights Templar, and I was fighting at the Battle of Agincourt, and they were fighting the Moors, and I didn't even know that battle existed really. So when I remembered that as a child, I went back and explored it using thought of consciousness, and they'd got developed a new arrow tip, new technology, and that arrow tip pierced my armor because it was a new metal they were using, and it went straight into my heart, and I died. And I remembered that, and I remembered it because of it violent. And then the other one, I was a royalist in in France, and there was a big storming of the Bastille, 1789, something like that. And they came and raided our house, and because we were royalist, we were all put in the back of the car and carted off to the Bastille, and I had my head chopped off.
Oh.
And,
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I know, and I explored that. As a child. I was thinking, at first I thought it was a dream, and I thought, so when I woke up, when the guillotine was coming down, I thought,
of course,
what's going to happen if that guillotine chops off my head? Will I die? And I thought, well, and I woke up, I didn't die. So at school that day, I'm thinking, I'm going to go back into that dream. I'm going to go and explore that. I want to know, if I die in a dream, do I die in this physical reality? And I think I was about 11 at that time. So I went to bed. I got back into that time scale, that past life. I lived through it. Only this time, I was watching it as a third party, because I'd already seen it unfold. Yeah. And it got to the point where the guillotine was coming down. And I wanted to know, A, would I die in a dream? and B, could I see in the basket where my head fell off? So the guillotine came down, chopped my head off. I saw in the basket for about 4 seconds. I didn't wake up, but I woke up the following morning and it answered the fact that, if you die in a dream, you don't die in this reality. So, but very strange. And then the other one, I was a priest in the Temple of Karnak in Egypt. And I liaised between the seven sisters at that time who were guiding humanity and the societies at that time. So I remember that, and I remember the avenue of pillars, because that led down to their quarters where the seven sisters lived, as it were. And I was the only person that was allowed to go in there to get their messages to spread to the leaders and things. So I suppose it's a bit similar to what I'm doing now, really, conveying messages from different people, just a communicator, just a messenger. But I think sometimes the past lives that we have educate us to what we're going to be doing in the next life. And because I've been educated in this life, no doubt as a Knights Templar, no doubt as a young royalist, I was only about 14 when that happened to me, that education helps us where we are now at this moment in time. So in relation to understanding that consciousness continues to live on and you can create a new reality. And I've even been shown my next incarnation. And I think and I've met others that have seen their next incarnation as well. So I think that's really just part of the education in understanding that the true life form throughout the universe is consciousness itself. And we manifest that consciousness as a physical reality. That was my understanding of from all that they've taught me, really.
Yeah, that's basically what I've been taught as well. So
okay, well, I am finding that actually the more people I speak to, we've all been taught the same stuff.
We have
maybe slightly different angle to it, a little bit more, maybe a little bit left out, but we've all been taught the same stuff. It's just and that in itself gives you confidence and to speak out about it, because others reinforce it. It's just fascinating, really. And especially with Karen, having the downloads that I've had, exactly the same. And she questioned them. She didn't know whether it was her own mind that was making them up until she heard my talk. And then she realized that there's something more to this than meets the eye. So, and then she joins the Beck group, and we're all working together now. So it's just fascinating, really. Absolutely fascinating.
And that is key, right? The collaboration amongst humanity. I think that has been a big, big theme for many of us, is the collaboration, not just for our purpose in terms of the reveal of ETs and all, but I think in general, it's a huge theme for all of us to learn collaboration and unconditional love. I think those are the biggest themes.
They are, I would agree with that. And like I say, it's really it's not about the ETs, it's about humanity. It's about our evolution. We have to evolve as a species to understand who we are. And then the technologies will come, there'll be shared technologies. But it's about our evolution, not the ETs. They're just there. They've still got their lives anyway. But those that are here to help us to evolve with an understanding of consciousness and as a species, so we become a benevolent species towards one another. Which we need to learn to do that first and stop having the wars. And we are a tribal system, aren't we? We cherish our lands, cherish our cultures, but we need to integrate them and become one humanity, really.
We need to cherish those, but also cherish each other.
Exactly.
The same
way. So and then we're on that path. I mean, some of the religions teach that. Anyway, the Eastern religions, I haven't studied them a little bit, and they teach that. But in the West, we've lost all that. So we went down the materialist scientist route, and we lost all that. So we've got to regain that first, and then move forward. And like I say, I'm quite excited for the future to see what happens, and it's the individuals that are working towards it. All those groups, the group that you belong to, there's the many other groups that I
Many.
speak with, and they're all working towards the same thing. Well, they'll all come together with that collective consciousness, and then we, the emissaries, the experiencers, can reach out collectively to the ETs. And we already know we can ask them to show their craft, because I do that. Other people do that. It's common for experiencers to do that. And we just really need to extend it then. In shows the craft, can you come down and land? We want to meet with you. Our emissaries want to meet with your ambassadors.
Exactly.
And that's where we're headed. So
absolutely.
I'm sure.
And
I hope
I have been. Go ahead.
I hope to be there to greet them.
I'm sure that you will be. I'm sure that you will. This is your mission as well. And I know that I was called into a meeting there in energy form to speak with two groups of people. It was part of a committee 2 weeks ago. And there was a conversation between a group of Pleiadians and a group of Arcturians about the Pleiadians were like, let's go see them, and the Arcturians were like, we have a process.
Yeah,
we have a process. So there's talks going on about our progression and how we're doing. Indeed. So
I suspect they're as excited as we are, because they realize what we can evolve to and how we can eliminate all our wars, our poverty, our famine, and protect the earth, because of all the pollution, we're killing the earth. And when you think the earth is conscious itself as well, so we have to, and there's sufficient resources here to, I always see it as a spaceship, and the spaceship has humanity on it. And but we have to take care, maintain that spaceship, and it will look after us. So at the moment we're neglecting it, we're abusing it, and we need to. And I know my ETs are always telling me how concerned they are about the pollution, and they're particularly concerned about the Fukushima pollution, the radiation that's still leaking into the oceans there. So and they're prepared to share some of their technologies to help clean some of that radioactive pollution up. So, but hopefully they will do that when we reach out to them and ask them to reveal themselves globally. But then we need ambassadors like yourself to meet with them, to convey information, and then create that new society. And there are many working towards it. I'm sure there must be many within the political systems, but they don't come forward yet because they don't want to be ridiculed, which is understandable. I can come forward and speak of my experiences because I don't mind being ridiculed, and I've got a mission to do. So I'll just take it as it comes, as it were. But if you're in an important position, in a political position, then it must be difficult to speak out
I'm sure.
this moment. So so we can speak out for them, and then when they're in a position to take over the politicians, then we can do that, as long as they have an understanding that we need to change direction and evolve as species, as humanity.
Exactly. So final thoughts, Kevin.
Final thoughts. There's still a lot of work to do. There are many working towards it. We will have a positive outcome. We will have those golden years for humanity. It will come from the people. It will come from the citizens of Earth. Our political structures have collapsed at the moment, I believe, and we need to rebuild them. And the experiencers, the emissaries, the ambassadors are here to help with that. So yes, exciting times ahead for our species, for humanity.
Indeed. So I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your amazing story and all of the work you do. Thank you from all of us on Earth, and thank you for joining us for this podcast. It's been
thank you for inviting me, Tanys. I've enjoyed chatting with you. And we chatted for about 20 minutes before we started recording, so we have so much in common. It's just amazing. So, but thank you again for inviting me, because without people like you doing your work, I cannot get that message out. So you're a very important part of this process of the reveal itself. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching this podcast of the Bridge to the Galaxy. We're so happy that you joined us, and please come back again for the next one. We'll see you soon.